What's going on, guys, and welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different than usual, and we will be discussing NHL 21. So far, no trailers or features or pretty much anything have been confirmed yet for NHL 21, but that doesn't mean we can't speculate and give our thoughts on what we want to see in the game. I just want to make a few things clear before we get into it. I will not really be discussing anything Hockey Ultimate Team related, because I feel that if the game wants to become better, EA needs to look at areas other than Ultimate Team, as that's where their game is lacking the most these days. Also, I just want to remind everyone that EA in the NHL series is going through a transition period after the release of NHL 21, as the next generation consoles are coming out later this year. So with NHL 21 being the last game in the NHL series that only releases on PS4 and Xbox One, we may not see many changes, as EA will most likely try and load up the following game for its debut on the next gen consoles. Then again, NHL 14 was an amazing game with many new features, despite being the last release specifically for PS3 and Xbox 360, and NHL 15 on next gen, which we thought would be the greatest game yet, at the time was probably the worst game in the series. Whatever, like I said, nothing has been confirmed or denied yet, so maybe what we discussed in this video has a shot of making it into NHL 21. I know it may seem like this video is going to be just bashing EA, but at the end of the day, I am grateful for the work they put in to give us a game every year. I understand why people are frustrated, and they have every right to be, but I think many people forget if it weren't for EA, we wouldn't even have an NHL video game to play. So with all this being said, now let's get into the video. So to start things off to the things I would like to see in the online part of NHL 21, I'm sure you saw this one coming a mile away, and that is GM Connected. GM Connected was added in NHL 13 on the old gen consoles, and the mode itself was a great idea. Basically, it is a normal GM or franchise mode, but it is online and each team in the league could be user controlled. If you had 30 friends and they all had NHL, you could all literally play with each other. GM Connected on NHL 13 and 14 was very hard to play, as the simulation engine took very long and there were many other issues, but the idea was there. Instead of bringing it to the next gen consoles, which probably had the power to fix many of those problems and building upon what they created, EA just gave up on the mode altogether, which is really a shame. Next up for the online features I'd like to see is roster sharing. I know I've seen many videos on YouTube where people recreate rosters from old NHL seasons and put them into franchise modes. These people put a ton of time into them, and it's sad they can't share them with the rest of the community. What I don't understand is this feature is used on pretty much all other sport games like NBA 2K and EA's very own Madden. On those games, you can create any roster you want and upload it for anyone to download. How cool would it be to download a roster from all the teams from 2008-2009 season, for example, and then put it onto a GM Connected with all of your friends? Just throwing that out there. Now the next thing we're going to be discussing is EASHL. Like GM Connected, practice mode for EASHL is another feature that we saw in older games that I would want to see back. I don't play EASHL 2 competitively, but for those who do, I'm sure they would love to see this mode back so they could work on plays and a bunch of other things with their teammates. Another cool thing I would like to see come to EASHL are line changes. I know some of you guys may think this is a pretty stupid idea, but hear me out. In the real world of hockey and the NHL, line changes are huge. Just last year in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, we saw how one bad change can impact a hockey game after Brad Marchand went for a late change on the Alex Pietrangelo goal. On EASHL, maybe we could have players that when they get tired, skate to the bench for a refreshed version of their player, instead of gliding for a few seconds so their tiredness bar increases back up. I think this would be pretty cool and bring some more realism to EASHL. Now let's take a look at the offline game modes. So when it comes to the offline game modes of NHL, I don't really see any need to add new game modes, but I do see one current existing game mode that needs rehauls. NHL's Be a Pro, I am willing to bet money on, is easily the least dense game mode on any sports video game on the market right now. In NHL 14, we saw Live the Life mode that added some pretty cool new features, such as interviews that affected your relationships with the fans, players, and management, which was a step in the right direction. In that same year on NBA 2K14 for the next-gen consoles, we saw 2K revamp their version of Be a Pro known as My Career. NBA 2K14's My Career was the first of its kind and was a huge success. It featured a story mode with cutscenes of your player getting drafted, interacting with teammates, doing endorsement deals, and even your player driving to the arena in their car. I wasn't even a fan of basketball in the slightest at the time, and this got me to purchase the game, and I must say 2K14 is still to this day one of my favorite sport games I've ever purchased. So after seeing this from NBA 2K, the expectations for NHL 15's Be a Pro on the next-gen consoles were massive. What did we get? Well, not only did we not even get the Live the Life features from NHL 14, EA took even more steps backwards and gave us the NHL Be a Pro from NHL 11 that didn't even give the players the option to simulate to their next shift. This was incredibly frustrating at the time, and even though they added this into the next shift feature back, and the skill tree, the game mode still has no playthrough value whatsoever till this day. So in NHL 21, and if not that, at least for NHL 22 on the next gen consoles, please give the people who have patiently been waiting for a real Be a Pro mode something to put hours into that is well thought out. I would love a more enhanced version of the Live the Life we saw in NHL 14. Fuck, I would even take back what they did for NHL Slapshot on the Wii that allowed you to start your Be a Pro from when you were just a kid playing on the ponds, all the way up until you retire in the NHL. Again, I understand this not being something they add to a game that will be on a different console the year after, but for NHL 22, I really hope we see a brand new version of the Be a Pro altogether. Next thing I want to touch upon is franchise mode, and before we do that, I think EA has done a great job the past few years making this mode what it is. I would just like to add a few things onto what they already have. I think it would be cool to add the All-Star Weekend and the All-Star Game. Maybe if one of your players gets selected, it can affect their morale, and I think overall it would just be really cool to play the skills competition. Imagine controlling McDavid in the fastest skater versus Matt Barzal or Dylan Larkin, or facing off against Shea Weber in the hardest shot. Maybe we could even see this implemented into Be a Pro. I would also love to see a return of outdoor games. How cool would it be if your team got selected and you were allowed to create a custom jersey for the big game? Also, with EA making Madden and FIFA games, they have all these models for these other stadiums that would be cool to use, so I don't see why it would be too hard for them to do this. Again, this is another feature that was once in the game. Still on the topic of franchise mode though, I think player tryouts as well as an option for conditional picks and trades would be a nice addition to the trading and signing aspects of the mode. And yeah, like I said, I think franchise mode is pretty solid, but there is still a few things they can add to it. The next stuff I want to see added isn't anything game mode specific, just little additions I think would be nice. Pre-game warm-up cutscenes, national anthem cutscenes, and even the 3 stars skating out after the game would be fun to see again. Also, seeing your team's banner be raised after a Stanley Cup win, and even the option to retire players' numbers with a pre-game ceremony. This stuff is pretty cool, but I would much rather see more gameplay changes before any of these type of things added to the game. Now let's see what other people in the community would like to see in NHL 21. So a few days ago, I put out a post on my community tab asking what you guys would like to see added to NHL 21, and we got over 300 responses. I'm going to go through some of them. Sadly, I can't go through all, but I feel like there's a good chance some people have some overlapping ideas, so hopefully your idea is somewhat covered in some aspect. And if you want to see more after the video, the post is still up and you can go through the responses at your own time. So the first response comes from Kai Donahue, and he says, in Be a Pro, you should be able to be interviewed before the draft and tell some teams that you don't want to be drafted to that team. You should also be able to actually be traded in Be a Pro when you request for one. You should be able to get chemistry with players on your team. There should be interviews after the games. You should be able to go talk to the coach for new line mate or get to the GM to trade for a better goalie or player. All of those points I agree with, and personally I actually really do like the draft interviews where you can just straight up tell a team that you don't want to play for them. I think that would just save a lot of time and something I think should be added to NHL 21. The next response is from Wes, and they would like to see a start from today feature for franchise mode like they have in NBA 2K. I absolutely love this idea, and seeing how it works in 2K over the years, I think it could definitely work in NHL. Basically, this mode starts the season from the exact day you decide to start it. Say you start the mode in February, on that exact day in February, your franchise mode will start with every team's exact record in real life and all the up-to-date stats for the players. As someone who does a lot of career simulation videos, this would be an awesome feature for videos like that. Instead of wiping all the stats from the player I use from the current season like I always have to do, it would just start the season from the day I start the simulation, and I would simply just have to sim the rest of the season from that point on. I really hope EA considers this. A lot of you guys would like to see the addition of warm-ups as well to the game. I think this would be fun to see, but I feel like it would only be good for Be a Pro. I feel that if it was in every game mode, it would just become this annoying part of each game that would get boring quickly if you had to skip it every time in modes like franchise mode. But for Be a Pro, like I said, I think it would be a fun addition. It would be cool to do the solo lap for your debut, or maybe start a scrum prior to the game. Like I said, I definitely want to see this, but definitely with an option to turn it off in case it gets old quickly. Next response is from Maximus Zebit-Steinis, and they would like to see the Coaches Challenge come to NHL 21. I would love to see this come as well, but I don't see how it would work in a video game. The CPU itself determines whether a goal is a good one or not, and I don't see why the game would deliberately get calls wrong for the option for the user to challenge it. Again, I think it would be a nice addition, but I just don't see how it would work in the game. The next response comes from Gensel, and they would like to see the World Juniors tournament be added to Be a Pro and franchise mode. This would be awesome for both modes as it would add more depth to Be a Pro, and in GM mode it would be cool to see how the player you've been scouting compares to other top prospects, and depending on how they perform, maybe it can affect their draft stock. Like I said, really cool idea, and hopefully we see it in NHL 21 or any other future title. Firestock 2005 has a list of things they would like to see in franchise mode. To start off, they would like to see the All-Star Game and Skills Competition, Hall of Fame inductions for legends throughout the game mode, jersey retirements with a ceremony for user and CPU teams, as well as a ceremonial puck drop. They then go on to talk about storylines to motivate players. This seems like an awesome idea, and I think you could have it actually play a role in franchise mode. One example of a storyline that we could see would be, say a star player leaves your team in free agency. When your team plays them next season, depending on if they win or lose, it could have a big effect on team morale for the following few games. Firestock also suggested Stanley Cup banner raisings, 3-star of the game presentation, celebrations, Winter Classic and Stadium Series games, player intros for home openers, locker room sellies after a win, and real coaches and real GMs. Again, I like these ideas, and I feel like most of them can be implemented into the game. Getting the rights to use the real GMs and coaches may be hard to do with the licensing, but I feel like everything else should somewhat be able to be put in the game. Christopher Tropiano says they need to add all-time records. They need to add league history, so you can see who won the Stanley Cup each year for more than just 5 years, and you could see the award winners for more than just 5 years as well. I completely agree with this. I think it is stupid that the game doesn't log all the stats from every season, and this is again another thing that is in the NBA 2K series that is not in NHL. Christopher also says you should be able to edit players while in the middle of a season. You should also be able to move a player wherever you want to move them in franchise mode once it has already started. He also thinks legendary players like Lemieux, Gretzky, and Orr should be able to exceed the 99 overall limit and go to 110 to make their scoring more realistic. He also thinks you should be able to make online leagues where you can play with your friends, and also thinks that franchise mode should be able to go much longer than just 25 years. Personally, I don't really know how the ratings over 99 will work, but I agree that there should be a way for players like Gretzky and Lemieux to be significantly better than any other players on the ice for sure. I also agree that franchise mode should be longer than 25 years, but when I get past year 10 in my personal GM modes, my game starts to have many glitches and the menus start to not even work sometimes. So if they make it longer than 25 years, I hope they test if the consoles are powerful enough to keep the game somewhat playable as you go deeper into the simulation. Alright guys, so I think I'm going to end this here. I know I probably missed a lot, but there were so many responses and I didn't want to make this video too long. Like I said, the post is still on my community tab, so if you want to see other suggestions, you still can, and if you have any other ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments of this video. Another thing I would like to say again is that this video is not meant to be bashing EA in any fashion. I just want to have a really fun NHL game again like we had years ago, and I'm rooting for and believe that EA can do this. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.